My philosophy has always been to think of better ways of catching mice rather than building a better mousetrap. So you have to be able to think out of the box, as they say these days, think unconventionally.
In 1972, an anonymous gift of nearly $500,000 was given to endow the creation of the Biomedical Engineering Center at Purdue University. The center's first director was Paul Stanley, co-founder of Purdue School of Aeronautics. It was the start of thinking unconventionally, using engineering to improve human health.
Bill Hillenbrand was a major industrialist in Indiana. He made his fortune making two things that nobody ever wants to use: caskets and hospital beds. Hillenbrand had a problem with an unfortunate death or two that happened with patients in Hill-Rom beds. Professor Paul Stanley found that there was an improper grounding of a motor so that current could leak out onto the bed and electrocute people who made contact with the bed. So Paul Stanley said, well, that's not right. All you have to do is insulate this motor. So they took the motor and they mounted it on a piece of wood and then mounted the wood to the frame of the bed, fixed the problem. Bill Hillenbrand thought that Paul Stanley was a genius. He said, we've got to make more people like this. Bill Hillenbrand was so happy, he decided to give a whole lot of money to Purdue to found the Biomedical Engineering Center.
If you walk into a hospital, everything in that space was certainly touched by a biomedical engineer. The bed, the gown, the IV bag, the devices that you might be implanted with. I'm personally type 1 diabetic, so I wear a continuous glucose monitor and an infusion pump. Classic biomedical engineering.
They needed to find a permanent director. Bob Hanneman went to see his friend at IU School of Medicine. And he said, I want you to find me all the books that are written on biomedical engineering. They came back with one. And it was written by L.A. Geddes and L.E. Baker in Baylor College of Medicine in Houston.
Bob Greenhorn, the associate dean, came down to Baylor, and I said, no, I don't want to go. I got it too good here. Then they came back, and I said, well, if you want a real program, I'm going to have to bring some people with me.
Geddes packed up a moving van with his extensive laboratory equipment and left Texas for Indiana.
Biomedical engineering at Purdue had some real humble beginnings. As an undergraduate, Professor Stanley was a mentor for me, and he informed me that Dr. Geddes actually would be showing up at the door in his van, and so I was there to help them unload the van.
And I can personally remember rolling up the huge experimental defibrillator up the big incline in the basement of the electrical engineering building.
We came in and there were 4 desks, 4 chairs, and 4 telephones, but the telephones didn't work.
After being recruited from Baylor Medical College in 1974, the 4 founders of Purdue Biomedical Engineering were known affectionately as the SOBs, Sons of Baylor.
The original definition, which Geddes didn't like, was the Baylor Mafia. So he said, well, that's SOBs, Sons of Baylor. But he thought that maybe that would be insulting to Purdue. He said, well, we should say the survivors of Baylor. But what everybody said was Sons of Baylor. And what the other people said was the Baylor Mafia.
Professor Geddes was a scientist and a phenomenal teacher. And Tack Tacker was a physician, Joe Borland was an engineer, and Charlie Babbs was a physician. So it was a good combination in biomedical engineering covering a number of the different areas.
When they came to Purdue, they were able to attract a wide variety of collaborators and students to work on some of the most challenging problems in healthcare at the time.
Geddes said the purpose of biomedical engineering was to use all the tools of engineering to improve diagnosis, treatment, or rehabilitation of human disease.
The early years marked a period of rapid growth for the center, which moved to the A.A. Potter Engineering Building in 1976.
Geddes wanted to build the highest power defibrillator in the world. We had a small one that's about the size of a refrigerator in a hotel room. And it was filled with capacitors that could put out more current than almost any commercial defibrillator. It was called Little White. Then after that, they built a bigger one, which was almost the size of a Volkswagen. It was called Big White. And then finally, the third one that they made in the early 1980s was called Joule, Joule being the unit of energy. And it was another great big cabinet filled with even higher powered capacitors.
A lot of that research was seminal in developing the implantable defibrillator that is so common today.
As a matter of fact, it was Norman Weldon who came to us in 1974 after we got here and said, Les, I want you to make an implanted defibrillator. I said, Norman Wellen, you're out of your mind. I said, nobody knows how to do that. Don't talk like that. He says, I'll come back in a few months and you'll have it solved. He said, how much? I said, $25,000, my usual bargain price. He says, you got it. And we made it work, and we tested it. And there's no defibrillator today that detects both the electrical activity and the loss of mechanical activity. And now it is well known by cardiologists that you can have an electrocardiogram and no heartbeat, no mechanical beat at all. So the patent is expired, so anybody's free to take that technology now.
He was always interested in tinkering, looking for new ways of doing things in an era where medical devices were just starting.
Sherry Harbin, a biochemistry graduate from Indiana University, chose Purdue over Harvard for her graduate degree. She worked closely with the four founders.
These gentlemen were way ahead of their time in terms of their vision and their enthusiasm and their passion. I just absorbed everything that I could from them, and having the opportunity to stay on as a faculty and continue to pass the baton, to the next generation and next generation, that's the dream I'm living.
Dr. Geddes famously would show up at people's experiments and walk in and start asking questions. Of course, he could ask questions that no student could answer, and he would do that so that the group would start talking about it and push their knowledge of what was historically available, what they were doing, why they were doing the experiments.
The first product that I had the opportunity to participate in was the decellularized tissue graft technology. It was there that I just really experienced that team science. And it was so fabulous because a couple of my fellow student colleagues were employee number 1 and 2 at Cook Biotech, Inc.
I am not sure that people in Cook Medical understand how much impact Purdue has had. The number of companies that are in the research park that are based on technology from Purdue, those companies employing hundreds of students from Purdue, that has resulted in a number of products being developed in the Purdue Research Park with the help of Purdue faculty that have touched millions and millions of patients.
Les Geddes retired as director in 1991, but continued to teach and conduct research. In 1998, the Department of Biomedical Engineering was created, the first new engineering department at Purdue in over 40 years. George Wanaka became the founding head.
The department got off to a very fast start because we were able to pool faculty members from many colleges across campus who brought unique expertise, veterinary medicine expertise, pharmacy expertise, and that allowed us to tackle complex problems that most other institutions couldn't do so easily because they didn't have that breadth of expertise.
In 2004, a generous gift from the Weldon family made possible the Weldon School of Biomedical Engineering, the first named engineering school in Purdue history. The Martin C. Jiske Hall of Biomedical Engineering opened in 2006.
I came to Purdue from 2004 to 2008. And when I was looking for a school, I knew I wanted to do an engineering school, but I was also debating about medicine. And that's when I learned about the new biomedical engineering program. And I said, this is a perfect way of me combining my passion for medicine and engineering. And here I am, a 3-time graduate of that program. Dr. Geddes was actually on my master's committee. He was always on top of whatever experiment I was doing, always willing to provide advice. It was just always that warm smile that you're so excited to see, even if it was at 5 or 6 in the morning.
During his more than 50-year career, Les Geddes spawned numerous technologies that profoundly impacted the practice of medicine. He passed away in 2009. Shortly after he discovered a safer method of performing CPR.
A rib fracture is a real problem. So we've got a new method. It doesn't involve pushing on the chest. We push on the abdomen, and that produces good blood flow.
There's a picture of Dr. Geddes getting his presidential award in our senior design lab. The students get to see this moment of Dr. Geddes getting his presidential award from President Bush. So that's really special.
When you get an award, you must recognize the old Texas saying, which is that when you see a turtle on a fence post, you know it had a whole lot of help getting there.
In 2022, The Weldon School named the light-filled atrium of the Martin C. Jischke Hall of Biomedical Engineering after George Wadicka.
We outgrew Jischke Hall long before anybody thought that was possible, which moved us to need an innovation wing, which we've now constructed.
In 2024, Kevin Otto became the new head of the school. Otto had been a professor here from 2006 to 2014.
And then I went to Florida for 10 years to be closer to patients, clinical trials. There's an excellence that comes with Purdue that is hard to find in other places, and it tends to become a practice. It becomes ingrained. So when the opportunity came up here, especially with our given Indianapolis opportunities, I feel like I can bring some of my experience to help.
Few biomedical engineering programs in the United States have reached a 50-year milestone. For half a century, students and faculty in biomedical engineering at Purdue have embodied the motto of Les Geddes: use engineering to improve the health of humanity.
One of our metrics is always how many patients are impacted by the technologies either we've discovered or that we've worked with company partners. And that number is upward of 10 million patients worldwide, and we want that to become hundreds of millions of patients.
The types of innovations we're seeing from the researchers now and the students, I say it's a little bit like science fiction sometimes looking at these things, but Purdue BME is always on top of it.
Innovation of ideas from bench to bedside is absolutely my passion and my purpose. And I think that is a common denominator for many of us that are here.
Taking technology to the point where it's a medical device approved by FDA, watching its impact on a patient, that patient healed up, that's what it's all about.
Ever since Dr. Geddes and the Fantastic Four came to Purdue, Purdue has always been on the map, and hopefully we can do justice to their previous work to make sure that we keep Purdue BME on the map for the next 50 years.
I had the absolute joy of working with Les Geddes, Charlie Babbs, and Joe Borland for decades. Working in a team effort with people like that is just fantastic.
Purdue was a wonderful place to conduct research. Dr. Geddes was an extraordinarily talented, generous mentor, put his mark on many students, including me.
It was a truly remarkable intellectual environment which deserves to be remembered and replicated. The kind of collaborative spirit, the kind of creative juices that were kept bubbling up all the time. It was really special. What gives me hope is the look on the faces of students and their desire to make the world a better place for their having lived in it.
I often wish that I could share what I've experienced with our young faculty. I'm sorry, I'm tearing up. Because it's been such a journey. And that journey continues with Purdue and Indianapolis. And I'm so excited for them because that's going to be the chapter that they build. It's just so fun to be here and continue to empower students and motivate them so that they can continue to shine the light and carry the baton.